November is Indigenous Peoples Month, and this week our country celebrates the Thanksgiving holiday. So today we begin our worship acknowledging the indigenous nations on whose land we currently reside. The First Unitarian Church of Chicago resides on the traditional homelands of the Three Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. This area was the site of trade, gathering, and healing for more than a dozen other Native tribes. We name them to not only honor their history here, but to recommit ourselves to fighting the systems of oppression that continue to displace and oppress.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago online worship. I'm the Reverend David Schwartz, co-minister here at First Unitarian, and it is a pleasure to join you today online. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. We're a community of children and youth and adults, a community of many beliefs and many traditions, united not by the specific list of doctrinal points we all agree on, but by the values that we share, by the mission that we share, to grow our spirits, to grow as people, and to help to heal the world. Whether you're joining us online for the very first time today, or whether you've worshiped hundreds of times with this community, you're welcome here. And whether you believe in God some of the time, or all of the time, or none of the time, you're welcome here. No matter how much money's in your pocket, no matter if you have a PhD or a GED or no degree, you're welcome here. We're a people of many backgrounds, traveling in this moment into the future together. We're a people of many races and beliefs. We're a people of many genders and sexual orientations. And on this journey, in this path, in this community, all of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. You belong here. I invite you to center yourself, to settle yourself, and as the prelude begins, to prepare your heart and your mind, and your spirit for worship.
This year, our traditions have been dramatically changed because of COVID. Be it big or small, those touch points we are used to throughout the season are missing. This week, we will celebrate Thanksgiving, a complex holiday holding both gratitude and grief, in a year filled with our own complexity, holding many competing emotions. We light our chalice today in honor of this community and the ways that we have changed our traditions this year, keeping the spirit of church alive through our connection to one another.
I invite you now to join in the reciting of our covenant.
The commitment that we make to each other about what it is we're doing here, why we gather, who we're becoming, and who we are.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant.
To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you now to greet one another warmly in the chat box of friendship.
Remembering it's public, say hello.
Good morning. At this time, please have those who are young and young at heart join us for a time for all ages. Thank you. During Thanksgiving, when I was a child, people seemed to talk positively about how Native Americans interacted with European settlers. The negative aspects of those interactions and the chain of events unleashed thereafter were rarely discussed as the holiday morphed more into one about family and giving thanks. In recent years, the conversation surrounding this topic has become more historically accurate as Native communities who are diverse in heritage, culture, and traditions each asked those who celebrate Thanksgiving to grapple with the truths of living on a land that has a colonial history. The area the first Thanksgiving was supposedly celebrated on used to belong to the Wampanoag tribe, before settlers mostly drove them out through violence and disease, a pattern that went on to affect tribes across what is now the United States. It is important to note that the Cherokee, who I will discuss here in a moment, were not involved directly with the Thanksgiving tale, but indeed their lives were later negatively affected by the European settlement that followed. Part of righting that wrong is achieved by lifting up the voices of the oppressed. This Cherokee story, We Are Grateful, by Terry Sorrell and Fran Lasek, lift up the tradition of giving thanks in the Cherokee community that predates interaction with European settlers. If you are joining us live this morning, please enjoy this tale, and if you are watching this later, thank you for joining with us this morning as part of a community of seekers who work to highlight the inherent worth and dignity of every person as we work for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Thank you.
We Are Grateful, Oshali Haliga, by Tracy Sorrell, illustrated by Franny Lasek. Cherokee people say Oshali Haliga to express gratitude. It's a reminder to celebrate our blessings and to reflect on struggles, daily, throughout the year, and across the seasons. When a cool breeze blows and leaves fall, we say, Oshali Haliga. The pronunciation for the Cherokee word for fall is written on the lower right-hand side of the page. Uligo hus di. That means fall or autumn to the best of my pronunciation abilities. As shell shakers dance all night around the fire and burnt cedar scent drifts upwards towards the great new moon ceremony, as we clean our houses, wear new clothes, enjoy a feast, and forget old quarrels to welcome the Cherokee New Year. While we collect buckbrush and honeysuckle to weave baskets, to remember our ancestors who suffered hardship and loss on the Trail of Tears, and have hope that our Elise, or Grandma, cradles the newest member of the family and reveals his Cherokee name. As bears sleep deep and snow blankets the ground, we say, Oshali Hiliga. The Cherokee word for winter is written here, Gola, winter. While elders share stories and we savor buttery bean bread and steamy hominy soup, as older children teach the younger ones how to make corn husk dolls and play cane flutes, when we feed our animal and bird friends, while we gather to remember an uncle who has passed on, as men cuddle babies and sing traditional lullabies in Tuskegee, Cherokee, Jaligi, Cherokee. When showers fill streams and shoots spring up, we say, Oshali Haliga. The Cherokee word for spring is featured here, Gogeyi, spring. While men sing, asking for thunder and lightning's protection from the emerging sprouts that women tend, as we gather wild onions, spring's first food, and serve them with hen's eggs, as we practice patience to sew pucker toe moccasins and coil clay to build beautiful pots, as we plant ani, strawberries, and ancestral stories, sweet-smelling reminder not to argue with each other, as we embrace a clan relative heading off to serve our country. As the crops mature and the sun scorches, we say, Ojali Halika. The Cherokee word for summer is featured here. Gogi, I. Gogi, summer. When we grasp our gigs and wade into the cool creek to catch crawdads for supper, as we sink our teeth into the season's first harvest at the green corn ceremony, while we click-clack sticks and chase small ball and fling it high at the stickball game pole. When we recall the ancestors' sacrifices to preserve our way of life, to celebrate history. The Cherokee word for history is featured here. Nulis Tani Dola, and listen to our tribal leaders speak at Cherokee National Holiday. Every day, every season, Oshali Haliga, we are grateful. Thank you.
Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Our words for reflection today are from the U.S. Poet Laureate, Joy Harshaw. She is a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation. Perhaps the world ends here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared and set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. This is the week of Thanksgiving. Things are different this year. We gather at the table in our home, joined by those living in our home or perhaps loved ones through a screen, maybe ancestors through time. We may gather our spirits and hearts whole or broken and sit in solitude at the table this year. It is a feast day in a time of pandemic. Holidays, holy days, feast days are the annual celebrations with which we mark time. But in the shadow of their joy lies sorrow, sorrow for what will not be, sorrow for what never was. During this holiday season, we pray for those for whom the holidays are difficult, lonely, filled with grief, be it pains of holidays in this year in the age of COVID, or sadnesses of years past, etched in our hearts. During these celebrations of Thanksgiving, we remember the grave injustices of our country against Indigenous people. We pray that we may be part of a more just future. In a time of abundance for many, we hold in our hearts those struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty or financial insecurity, made even more grave by this pandemic. We are one. May we be generous with our gifts. In a time of mass illness and death and grief, we pray for those in harm's way, whether from violence across the world, across the street, or from a virus across the hall or the grocery store aisle. May the leaders of our communities and our world be granted wisdom and strength, that they and we be instruments of a brighter, healthier, and more equitable tomorrow, and of a just and lasting peace. For all the gifts we have received, may we be grateful. For all the lessons we have learned, may we be grateful. For the rising of another day, may we be grateful. And for the life that we've been given, may we be grateful. I invite you now to type in the chat box the names of those people or things you wish to hold in the love of this community, remembering the chat is public. Amen.
For all the gifts I have received, I am grateful. For all the lessons I have learned, I am grateful. For the rising of another day, I am grateful. And for the life that I've been given, I am grateful. For all the gifts I have received, I am grateful. For all the lessons I have learned, I am grateful. For the rising of another day, I am grateful. And for the life that I've been given, I am grateful. For all the gifts I have received, I am grateful. I am grateful. For all the lessons I have learned, I am grateful. I am grateful. For the rising of another day, I am grateful. I am
A couple weeks ago, on a crisp fall afternoon here in Hyde Park, I went over to CVS to pick up some staples for the house. You know, the supplies you just can't get at the produce market. And as I was weaving through each aisle, or just relishing the opportunity to be shopping in a real store with real people, I paused in the small grocery section. There, amidst the very limited supply of canned fruits and vegetables, was a single can of cranberry sauce. And I chuckled to myself and thought how even in a pandemic, when many of us are staying home this year, cranberry sauce is a must-have for this time of year. Doesn't it seem strange that a random berry which grows in a bog is a staple for so many and a tradition for the Thanksgiving holiday? Like, how did this come to be? This food even was nostalgic for Mark Twain, who put it on his list of favorite foods that would make up the, quote, perfect American feast while he was homesick abroad. This prompted research by Andrew Beers, author of Twain's Feast, to look further into the origin of these berries and their place on the Thanksgiving table. What came from his research was a lesson on traditions, where they come from and how they adapt. Using his findings, today we will look at our Thanksgiving traditions and where they come from through the perspective of an unexpected guide, the cranberry. Cranberry's connection to Thanksgiving is in reality one of commercial timing rather than historical fact. While many think that cranberries were present at the first Thanksgiving, that is in fact false. That first meal together was in reality a grim affair, not the nice and happy myth taught in many American schools. It was most likely an uncomfortable meal. Neither of the groups could communicate, most of the pilgrims had died by this point, and the only food confirmed to have probably been at the feast between the English and the Wampanoag are venison and wild birds. Neither group was really sure they could trust the other one, so they ate together more to keep close eyes on one another, and after the food was eaten, the pilgrims took this as an opportunity to display their weapons and military formations to the Wampanoag as a show of force. Now, I'm relatively certain that even the most awkward family holiday we could call to mind would pale in comparison to the type of dinner guests the English were that day. The use of cranberries in Thanksgiving feasts today is actually because of its growing popularity around the time that Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863. When it was first a national holiday, it was celebrating the union of the United States post-Civil War and had no specific menu or story attributed to it. People recommended many foods to be part of the Thanksgiving meal, and cranberries were in style and not currently associated with any holiday. So over time, food like turkey and cranberries became established traditions, and the story of the first Thanksgiving and the Pilgrims was attached. The creation of this holiday shows how traditions can change and adapt and morph over time. However, sometimes they don't always change for the better. This Thanksgiving myth of peace and unity between the English and the Wampanoag is harmful, as it focuses on an untrue narrative and celebrates the beginning of a story which for our indigenous cousins resulted in destruction. When I learned that this holiday had a past filled with colonialism and genocide, I was devastated, because throughout my life, I was taught this was a holiday of peace. I have many fond memories of dressing up as a pilgrim, making art projects of the Mayflower, and reading books about the story of the first Thanksgiving. I even am a direct descendant of John Howland, a man who came over on the Mayflower itself. With this information, I had to recognize that this story of the real Thanksgiving, in many ways, is my story. And that has been difficult and important work. Part of what that looks like for me is to tell the true story of the English Pilgrims and their impact on the indigenous people, and to not participate in traditions that perpetuate the untrue myth. Instead, I work towards a Thanksgiving which isn't focused on a warped version of our past, but embraces our dynamic and diverse culture of the present and future. One way to do this is to uplift and honor the stories of the indigenous people themselves. Thus far, we've focused a lot on the perspective of the Pilgrims in the Thanksgiving traditions. So now the Cranberry has somewhere else to take us. That is the Wampanoag tribe. Today, the Wampanoag tribe of Aquinnah on Martha's Vineyard celebrates different holidays other than Thanksgiving in the fall. One holiday is the National Day of Mourning that takes place on Thanksgiving Day itself. The other, a more joyful day, is Cranberry Day, which happens in the third week of October. According to Jeanette Vanderhoop of the tribe in Aquinnah, the Wampanoag people 10,000 years ago would store the cranberries in earthen pits to have vitamin supplements in the winter to prevent scurvy. In the 1980s, Cranberry Day was started by two women in the tribe to reconnect with this practice and appreciation of cranberries in their own way. This has been a holiday ever since. On Cranberry Day, children are excused from school, businesses are closed, and everyone in the Wampanoag community gather together to harvest and eat cranberries. Jeanette Vanderhoop herself said the best way to enjoy them is with a sharp cheddar. When reflecting on the holiday, she said, "Traditions change and cultures are adaptable. Things are forgotten and things come back. And there is a reason we do what we do." Cranberry Day is a way for the Wampanoag people to embrace their own history and traditions in a new way. This day celebrates the community, the families, and the heritage in a way that is empowering and makes sense for their group. Sadly, because of colonialization, there was a disconnect between the people of today and the traditions of their ancestors. However, the founders of Cranberry Day made a new tradition which connected them with their past. It shows how cultures change and adapt, and with that change can come joy and celebration. Traditions can be really important, whether it is to feel connected to the generations before us or to make our own traditions for the family we choose. This year, because of the pandemic, the traditions that we may hold are just simply not possible. In order to keep each other safe, many of us will need to stay home and love one another from a distance. Thanksgiving is a complicated holiday in the best of times, a day of holding many truths and emotions. We hold the truth of the real Thanksgiving story alongside the love of our family traditions. We grapple with the reality of what it means to be a part of this country and its history, while lifting up prayers of gratitude for what we have currently in our lives. For some of us, Thanksgiving will always be a difficult holiday for whatever reason it is. And on top of that, we hold all that this particular year brings with it. We are experiencing varying amounts of grief, over all we have lost, a desire to celebrate together, and the disorienting feeling of our traditions just going out the window. There's a specific feeling of loss that some of us may be experiencing this year about our traditions. This year will be different for this holiday, and while we can't make it feel the same as it always has in the past, it is an opportunity for us to make new traditions. No matter what Thanksgiving Day means to each of us, we can examine where our traditions stem from around this day and why they are important to us. We may unknowingly be attached to traditions which are harmful to others, like the inaccuracy of the first Thanksgiving story. Something we wouldn't have realized until we had this year, when everything about this holiday has made us take pause. As we make new traditions for ourselves this year, we can strive to dismantle the tangled Thanksgiving myth and the harm it has caused. Let us ask ourselves, what does a Thanksgiving look like that celebrates all of us in America and not just some of us? How do we remember the truth of the past while also holding Vanderhoop's message that cultures can change and adapt? Whatever we do this year, be it on Zoom or at home, will be very different. And we can make sure that these new takes on tradition embody the complexity of this holiday's history and our present time. We can share our gratitude for one another while also acknowledging the truth about the first Thanksgiving. We can have our cranberry sauce and take the opportunity to teach others about the Wampanoag tribe and their celebration of Cranberry Day. I hope that as you enter this Thanksgiving, that you are as creative as you desire with this holiday, that you embrace the emotions that you are experiencing as you create a new way of celebrating. May we all honor both the truth of the past and the truth of our present this year. And while we are all starting new traditions, may I suggest this year we can all try something new together. Fresh cranberries with sharp cheddar. As Jeanette Vanderhoop said, traditions change and cultures are adaptable. Things are forgotten and things come back. And there is a reason we do what we do. As we leave worship this morning, let us celebrate the ways in which we change and adapt. Let our new traditions honor both the truth of the past and the reality of our present. May the ways we connect with our loved ones bring us gratitude and hope. Our worship has ended. Now our service begins. May you be a blessing and be blessed.
Friends, in these days of social distancing and online worship, just like when we met in person, the service happens as the work of many hands. It happens because so many people come together to make it possible. Worship leaders and musicians, the administrators, the committee leaders, our board leaders, everyone working together. The ministry of this church is not your ministers. We're just a part of it. The ministry of this church is everyone doing what they can for and with everyone else. And I end the service with a word of deep gratitude and appreciation for all those hands who make this possible. This community is entirely self-sustaining and self-funded through the donations from members and friends. Will you consider making a donation today to support the work of this church and keep making these services and our community possible? Thank you.